So we have peanut butter, Peter Pan jar, Woodsy Owl, Give a Hoot, Don't Pollute for the Forest Service, a fantastic costume, and the evil Hamburglar from McDonald's. Can all three of you hold hands? Yes, if you can. See food and public service and what else?
Sorry, vegetarian.
You can shake hands. Yeah.
We'd like to welcome Ellen with us today to speak on the history of the American advertising character. Ellen?
A nice introduction. Thank you very much for having me. This is my first time in Montana. What a great character. Who's this? Right. For United Branch, she started in 1936, and we don't really think of her as having ethnic roots, but of course she does, and she was personified terrifically by the Carmen Miranda character. She sang and danced, etc. One of the lines of one of the verses talks about how don't put your bananas in the refrigerator. And Chiquita Banana was a very fun and entertaining character, but she was also designed by United Branch to educate everyone, especially the American housewives, how to use bananas. Because if you can, again, we're going to leave behind the 1990s reality for a minute and go back to the 30s. Bananas at that point in time were considered a very exotic imported fruit. They were not the everyday fruit that we now see on our supermarket shelves. So Chiquita Banana was also used as an educational character. Repetition sometimes works. Okay, another one of the top 10 or top dozen of the best characters ever. But there are a core group of characters who remain very popular and very recognizable over the decades, and Mr. Clean is definitely one of them. He was started in 1957, and he was started as a sailor image, scrubbing the decks with Mr. Clean. That is why he's wearing his white t-shirt rolled up, and that is also why he's wearing his earring, which is much to the dismay of a lot of San Francisco men. But he is a sailor, was a sailor. And do you remember the television commercial where it showed Mr. Clean coming out of the bottle?
Yes.
Well, that was not intended to be a genie, but it was perceived so strongly by the public as a genie-like character that from that point on, Mr. Clean was marketed and promoted as half sailor and half genie. And if you think about it, those are two very, very different images or archetypes, but they work somehow very well together in the case of Mr. Clean. Charlie the Tuna. What's his slogan, or the slogan said of him? Sorry, Charlie, right. Another line that hasn't been changed in years. Charlie the Tuna, of course, the tuna fish who wasn't caught. Charlie the Tuna is a product of the Leo Burnett Company, who some of you may be familiar with. Leo Burnett, the man who is no longer alive, and his agency, the Leo Burnett Company, which is headquartered in Chicago, are pretty much considered the granddaddies of this whole phenomena of advertising characters. They call them critters. So if you ever hear them referred to as critters, it's one and the same, critters or advertising characters. And Leo Burnett made many of the greatest ad characters, all the Kellogg's characters and many more. This is the Doggy Diner, which is only a regional character, and I love regional characters, and I'd like to hear, after we're done, I'd like to hear about your either Helena regional characters or Montana regional characters. They are very interesting, sometimes more interesting than the nationally distributed and produced characters. This is the Doggy Diner, which was just in the 4-county Bay Area. In its heyday, there were about 26 of these Doggy Diners representing a hot dog joint, and the food was pretty terrible. The Doggy Diner, though, was a very important Bay Area landmark. People would say, meet me in the Doggy Diner, or turn left at the Doggy Diner. There is only one of them left standing, and the museum owns one. We had him on display at the cannery at Fisherman's Wharf several years ago, and a lot of people took their photos in front of the Doggy Diner. So, for those of you who may have original character you never know what's going to happen to. to it or him or her? How or why does the whole mythological element fit in? And also about the museum, we specifically named the museum Modern Mythology. Why did we do that? Some of you might be familiar with Joseph Campbell. Does that name ring a bell? Oh, good. Okay. Joseph Campbell is on the advisory board of the museum, and what he talked about regarding mythology is that every culture of any kind, of any age, going all the way back anywhere around the world, every culture requires some kind of mythology. Sometimes it borders a little bit more on religion, sometimes it borders a little bit more on ritual. And also mythology, again, of all cultures, always manifests through art forms, the particular or appropriate art forms of that society. So we're familiar with, for instance, cave paintings or paintings on pottery. That's how we learn about myths. And we also have mythology, though, and it comes out in our different art forms. A couple of the slides actually have, as I said earlier, very direct translations to classical or traditional myths. That's very unusual. I would never purport to say that Ronald McDonald will take the same stature over the centuries as, for instance, Zeus. I wouldn't be foolish enough or arrogant enough to suggest that. But we really don't know how these characters will be seen in the hundreds or maybe even thousands of years if we're still around after we have produced them right now. They are clearly symbolically representative of where we are at now in terms of our society. Myths overall are stories that tell us how we relate to our world. And the advertising characters, again, this is subtle. I mean, even the corporations, the heads of the parent companies and even the agencies don't do this consciously, but they completely agree that we're all doing it on an unconscious level all the time, that the ad characters are created and designed to reflect and influence what we are perceiving, both consciously and unconsciously. But Pillsbury Doughboys was made to personify dough. That's what Pillsbury Doughboy is supposed to be all about. It's supposed to be dough come to life. You pop the canister, and the Pillsbury Doughboy pops out of the canister. And that actually harkens back to a lot of different myths. Again, all cultures, Eastern, Western, Gaelic, where something will magically kind of pop out of the womb. The canister is kind of representing the womb. So there are a lot of symbolic and very unconscious things going on, but definitely we need some kind of mythology. And if it's not going to be Zeus and Athena, it's going to be Hollywood, advertising characters, comic books, more on a level of pop culture.